Let's be honest for a second. When you walked in here tonight, where was your head at? Were you fully present, or were you running through the mental replay of that argument you had this morning? That deadline that's crushing you, or that nagging voice telling you you're not enough? Most of you are walking around in a fog, and you don't even realize it. That fog is your state. And here is the first thing you have to understand. If you want a different life, your state determines your decisions, and your decisions determine your destiny. You cannot make a powerful, life-altering decision when your physiology is slumped, your breathing is shallow, and your face is locked in a frown. It is biologically impossible. Your brain is wired to match your body. When you are physically collapsed, your mind collapses with you. That is why I made you move the second I stepped on this stage. That wasn't a gimmick. That was a tactical strike against your old patterns. Most people wait for motivation to strike like lightning. They sit on the couch, scrolling endlessly, hoping that someday they will feel ready to change. Let me tell you something brutal. Motivation is a byproduct of motion. You don't think your way into a new life. You act your way into a new way of thinking. When you raised your hand just now, when you turned your head to look at the person next to you, you interrupted the trance. You broke the spell of complacency. That simple physical movement sent a signal up your spinal cord to your brain that said, something is different. Pay attention. Your heart rate increased just slightly. Your oxygen flow improved. And in that fraction of a second, you became more alive than you were 10 seconds earlier. That is the power of state breaking. I want you to think about the greatest moments of your life. Think about a time you felt unstoppable. Were you slouched over with your eyes half closed? No. Saiti, Recco. You were upright, chest out, eyes wide, breathing deep. Your physiology was shouting victory before you even won. Now think about the worst moments. The times you made terrible choices. The times you gave up. The times you settled. Your body was small. Your shoulders were hunched. You were literally shrinking from your potential. The state controls the story. If you want to be one decision away from a different life, you have to change your state first. You have to shake off the sedation of normalcy. You have to move like the person you want to become before you become them. So when I tell you to stand up, to clap, to shout, do it not because I asked you, but because your future depends on it. Your body is the anchor of your mind. Move the body, shift the state, and suddenly that impossible decision becomes not just possible, but inevitable. That is engagement at the cellular level. That is where transformation begins. Now I want to take you deeper because moving your body is only half the battle. The second key is what I call future pacing. And this is where the emotional leverage really kicks in. You see, your brain has a magnificent flaw. It cannot tell the difference between something you vividly imagine and something you have actually experienced. That is not New Age fluff. That is neuropsychology. When you close your eyes and picture a lemon, your mouth waters. You haven't bitten a lemon, but your body reacts as if you have. That same mechanism can either keep you trapped or set you free. Most people use this power against themselves. They future pace disaster. They lie awake at night visualizing the worst case scenario, losing their job, their relationship failing, their health deteriorating. They rehearse failure so many times that when opportunity knocks, their body is already conditioned to say no. They are one decision away from a different life, but they have already decided. They just decided on the side of fear. But what if you flip that? What if you use that same powerful imagination to create leverage? So intense that staying the same becomes more painful than changing. That is what I asked you to do when I told you to close your eyes. I didn't ask you to daydream. I asked you to feel the cost of inaction. I asked you to project yourself 5 years into the future, same habits, same excuses, same small thinking. And I asked you to feel that weight, feel the regret, feel the emptiness of waking up one more morning knowing you had the chance to change and you let it slip through your fingers. That is pain. That is real pain. And pain is the greatest motivator on the planet. People do not change because they see a vision of pleasure. They change because they cannot tolerate another moment of their current agony. When you truly feel that future pain, something shifts inside you. The decision you have been avoiding suddenly becomes urgent. It becomes non-negotiable. You stop asking, should I do this? And start asking, how can I afford not to? That is leverage. That is the fire under your feet. And once you have that fire, you don't need willpower anymore because your why is so big that the how takes care of itself. You future pace the breakthrough instead of the breakdown. You rehearse the conversation where you finally speak your truth. You rehearse the moment you walk into that gym and own your health. You rehearse the feeling of financial freedom so vividly that your palms sweat. And when that vivid picture lives inside you, the decision is no longer a struggle. It is a release. You are not forcing change. You are surrendering to the inevitable. That is the power of future pacing. You anchor the decision in such deep emotion that your brain starts working for you instead of against you. And suddenly, that different life is not a fantasy. It is a memory of your future, and your body is already racing to catch up. Now let us talk about the third key, and this is where most people get it completely backwards. They wake up every morning and ask themselves the wrong question. They ask, what do I have to do today? They make lists, they plan, they strategize, and they wonder why they still feel stuck. Here's the raw truth. You can have the best action plan in the world, but if your identity does not match that plan, you will sabotage yourself every single time. Your identity is your thermostat. It sets the temperature of your life. If your thermostat is set at 70 degrees, no matter how hard you crank the heat, the system will eventually bring it back down to 70. That is why diets fail. That is why New Year's resolutions fail. That is why you start a business with fire in your belly and then slowly fade back into mediocrity. You are trying to change the output without changing the programming. You are trying to act rich while thinking poor, act healthy while seeing yourself as weak, act confident while believing you are not enough. It will never work. It cannot work. The universe is designed to reflect back to you exactly who you believe you are. So here is the shift I am asking you to make tonight. Stop focusing on the external actions and start focusing on the internal identity. Stop asking, how do I get this? That question keeps you small because it implies you do not have it yet. Instead, ask yourself a radically different question. Who do I have to become to get this? That one question changes everything because when you change your identity, your decisions change instantly. Let me give you an example. If you see yourself as a victim, your decisions will reflect victimhood. You will avoid risk, blame others, and wait for rescue. But if you change your identity to a creator, suddenly your decisions reflect ownership. You stop complaining and start building. You stop waiting and start acting. The actions are almost identical, but the identity behind them is worlds apart. That is why the most successful people on this planet do not focus on tactics first. They focus on who they are being. They adopt the identity of the person who has already achieved the goal, and then they backfill the actions. It is like method acting for your life. I want you to look at yourself right now. Look at the identity you are carrying. Is it serving you? Is it the identity of someone who is one decision away from a different life? Or is it the identity of someone who is waiting for permission? You do not need permission. You need a new story. You need to declare a new identity right now. Not tomorrow, not when you lose 10 pounds or get that promotion right now, because the moment you decide who you are, the world will start treating you accordingly. And that different life you have been dreaming about, it is not waiting for you to get ready. It is waiting for you to become the person who is ready. That is your decision. That is your identity. That is your new beginning. Now we arrive at the fourth key. And this is where the rubber meets the road. This is the moment of truth where everything I have talked about comes to a head. You have shifted your state. You have future paced the pain of staying the same. You have even begun to change your identity. But none of that matters if you do not understand the concept of burning the ships. Let me tell you a story that will sear this into your mind. There was a general who landed his army on enemy shores. The soldiers were exhausted. They were outnumbered, and fear was creeping into their hearts. As they stepped off the boats, the general looked at his men and gave a command that echoed through history. He said, "Burn the ships." The soldiers watched as their only way home went up in flames. There was no retreat. There was no plan B. There was only forward. And you know what happened? They fought like demons. They won because they had no other option. That is the energy I am calling you to right now. Most of you are living with one foot on the dock and one foot on the boat. You are straddling two worlds. You say you want a different life, but you keep a safety net. You keep your old job while you half-heartedly start your business. You keep that toxic relationship while you tell yourself You are working on it. You keep your old habits while you say you want to transform. Let me tell you what that is. That is not commitment. That is a hobby. That is dabbling. And dabbling gets you exactly nowhere except exhausted and frustrated. When you leave a back door open, your brain knows it. Your subconscious mind knows there's an escape hatch, so it never fully commits to the new path. It keeps you safe. Yes, but safe is not the same as alive. Safe is not the same as fulfilled. Safe is just a slow dying of your potential. Burning the ships means you make a decision. So absolute that there is no going back. It means you tell your friends, you tell your family, you put it out into the universe in a way that holds you accountable. It means you delete the apps that distract you. It means you turn down the opportunities that do not align with your new identity. It means you make the phone call you have been avoiding, not because it is comfortable, but because you have decided that comfort is no longer an option. And I am not talking about reckless stupidity. I am talking about strategic, intentional, all-in commitment. When you burn the ships, something magical happens. Your creativity skyrockets because you have to figure it out. Your resourcefulness multiplies because you cannot fall back. Your energy shifts because you are no longer split between two directions. You become a force of nature, and that is the energy of a person who is genuinely one decision away from a different life. Not a person who is hoping, not a person who is wishing, a person who has decided. And when you decide like that, the universe does not just open doors, it builds you new ones. Now, let us get into the fifth key, and this is where we dig into the raw wiring of the human psyche. You have to understand that every single decision you have ever made was driven by one of two forces, the avoidance of pain or the pursuit of pleasure. That is it. That is the engine behind all human behavior. And here's the problem that keeps people trapped for decades. They associate more pain with change than with staying the same. Their brain has made a calculation, whether they are conscious of it or not, that the discomfort of making that hard decision is greater than the misery of their current situation. So they stay, they tolerate the tolerable, they accept the unacceptable. They settle for a life that is lukewarm because they are terrified of the heat of transformation. But here is what I want you to see tonight. That calculation is wrong. It is flawed. It is based on a lie. You have been telling yourself, I asked you earlier to feel the cost of inaction. That was not a casual suggestion. That was me handing you the keys to your own prison. Because when you truly allow yourself to feel the pain of staying where you are, really feel it in your gut, in your chest, in your throat, something shifts. That pain becomes leverage. That pain becomes rocket fuel, and suddenly the pain of change does not look so scary anymore. Why? Because you have now linked massive pain to the old path and massive pleasure to the new one. That is the formula. That is the alchemy of transformation. Most people try to change by using willpower. They grit their teeth and white knuckle their way through. Let me tell you something. Willpower is a finite resource. It runs out. It fails you when you are tired, when you are stressed, when life punches you in the face. But leverage is inexhaustible. Leverage is the engine that runs even when you want to quit. So how do you use this in real life? You start by asking yourself two brutal questions. First, what has this current behavior cost me, not just financially, but emotionally, relationally, spiritual? What has it cost me in sleepless nights? What has it cost me in self-respect? What has it cost me in the eyes of my children? Feel that weight, let it crush you for a moment. Then ask the second question, what will it cost me if I do not change in the next 5 years? What will my health look like? What will my relationships look like? What will my soul look like? You sit in that pain until you cannot breathe. And then you flip it. You link massive pleasure to the new decision. You see yourself waking up proud. You see yourself looking in the mirror with respect. You see your loved ones looking at you with admiration. You make the new path so pleasurable, so vivid, so intoxicating that your brain has no choice but to chase it. That is leverage. That is the force that breaks the chains of mediocrity. And that is how you become unstoppable. Now we come to the sixth and final key, and this one is the master key that unlocks everything else. It is the reframe that changes the game entirely. Most people walk through life with a fundamental misunderstanding of what a decision actually is. They think a decision is just a choice, a preference, a casual selection between options. They say things like, I decided I want to lose weight, or I decided I want to be rich, and then they wonder why nothing changes. Let me tell you the truth that will set you free. That is not a decision. That is a wish dressed up in fancy clothes. A real decision is something entirely different. A real decision is a choice that cuts off all other options. It is a choice that leaves you no way out. It is a choice that burns the bridge behind you so that going back is not even a possibility anymore. When you truly decide, you are not saying, I prefer this. You are saying, this is the only reality I will accept. Think about that for a moment. Think about the power in that definition. Most people never make a real decision in their entire lives. They float, they drift, they bounce between preferences like a pinball, always reacting, never creating. They keep their options open because they are afraid of closing doors. But here is the paradox. Keeping your options open does not give you freedom. It gives you paralysis. You cannot move forward when you are constantly looking backward. You cannot climb a mountain if you are always checking to see if there's an easier path down. Real decision is the death of hesitation. It is the funeral of fear. It is the moment you stop negotiating with yourself and start commanding yourself. When you apply this to your life, everything changes. That decision you have been avoiding, it is not a decision because you have not cut off the alternatives. You are still entertaining the possibility of staying the same. You are still leaving the door cracked. So tonight, I am asking you to close that door forever. I am asking you to redefine what a decision means to you from this moment forward. When you say you have decided, you mean you have eliminated every other option. You mean you have drawn a line in the sand that cannot be crossed. You mean you have committed so fully that retreat is not even a word in your vocabulary. That is the level of decision that changes lives. That is the level of decision that creates millionaires, that heals marriages, that builds empires, because once you truly decide, your brain goes to work. Your subconscious mind starts finding solutions you never knew existed. Your energy aligns with your intention, and that different life you have been dreaming about, it stops being a dream and starts being your only reality. That is the power of cutting off all other options. That is the final key. That is your moment. Decide, truly decide, and watch the world rearrange itself around your commitment.